Good evening. My name is Tim Neff, and I'm a Vice President and Director of Museum and Education at Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I would like to thank you for joining us tonight for our monthly program called Spotlight On. This program takes place the second Thursday evening of each month at 7 p.m., and we examine different topics related to the mission here at Soldiers and Sailors. Tonight's topic will be looking at a look at Pittsburgh Zouaves. Might be a funny word for some of you out there, but you're going to learn all about what that word means and what it represents, specifically related to the American Civil War and with ties here to our city here in Pittsburgh. So if it's your first time joining us, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. But before we start, just in case it is your first time, let me tell you a little bit about Soldiers and Sailors, where we're coming from here today. I'll pull up my slideshow here and get some photos of our beautiful building. Soldiers and Sailors, as I mentioned, is located in Pittsburgh in the Oakland neighborhood. It was built back in 1910 as a memorial to the 25,000 men from Allegheny County here that served in the Civil War. And it was dedicated to those 25,000 men in their service to the Union Army. However, through the years, it has kind of evolved and changed into a memorial and a museum that today honors all veterans that have served Civil War through present day. And the museum is filled with artifacts that have been donated to us through the years by veterans and their families. So it's a wonderful place to come and learn all about the sacrifices of our local men and women who served in our military and see a lot of great artifacts that we have on display. If you haven't been in a while or you've never been, please join us and come and visit us. I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that at the end of the program, but I'll say now the best way to learn about Soldiers and Sailors is by visiting our website, soldiersandsailorshall.org. That'll tell you all about the museum, how to visit all our upcoming events, and it's a great way to keep up. And you can also join our mailing list by going to the website, and that way you can get updates about all our great events that we have at Soldiers and Sailors. As far as tonight's program, Spotlight On, if you have questions, we'd love to answer those for you. If you're watching on Facebook, all you have to do is submit a comment, and we'll do our best to answer it at the end of our program. If you're watching on YouTube, you can email us at soldiersandsailorspittsburgh@gmail.com. Although we might not be able to answer that one tonight, we will definitely get you an answer as soon as possible if you submit your question via the email there. Before we get started, let me introduce who's joining me. As usual tonight is our curator, Michael Kraus. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
Now that I've put my mute button off, I'm doing fine.
Yeah, now that you're live and direct, you're all good. Thank you, of course, for joining us. And Michael, I'm just going to say this up front. Michael, being the Civil War historian and expert that he is, I will be deferring to Michael a lot tonight. This is a topic that he is very familiar with, and I've learned a lot about it myself just from Michael, and of course, some of the pieces that we'll be talking about tonight that are from our collection. So with that said, I'm going to pull the slideshow back up here. And I think we have a slide just to introduce us here to the Zouave. And maybe this is just a good time just to kind of set some of the very basic information we can get out there about what the Zouaves were and what that word means and what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, Zouave is a particular kind of soldier that wears a particular uniform. And you can see it's quite exotic. And we'll be looking through our slides at several different types of Zouave uniforms, but essentially what they're composed of is a very short jacket with a decorative trim, big baggy trousers. In fact, the trousers a lot of times were made out of just two big squares sewn together and with a leg hole. So they're very big and baggy, fitted, of course, at the waist. And another essential piece of the Zouave look is a fez. It's a little cap that is almost like a sleeping cap. And they were notorious for their look. And we're going to talk about what kind of regiments were Zouave units here after we talk about the origins of the Zouave.
Yeah, I think the uniform definitely stands out. It's something that I know when I'm giving tours and people see the Zouave uniform that we have on display. It's a real eye catcher. People are caught off guard by it. Many people don't expect to see that when they're looking at a Civil War uniform. So that's part of the reason why I thought this would be a great topic to bring more attention to this unique aspect of the Civil War here. But like you said, Michael, let's dive into some of the origins of the Zouave name and how it got here for the Civil War. But before it got here, it started in Northern Africa, right, Michael?
Right. Yeah, they were in the French colonial days in Northern Africa, Algeria, Morocco. These were troops that were specialized in this costume, you know. And if you look at the American Zouave uniform, it's really almost exactly like this. And this is a black man in Algeria, Morocco. There were, you know, Northern Africa. There's a lot of black men who were in the army there. And he is a Zouave soldier, but he's got the jacket, baggy pants, and fez, which we're going to come to see was adopted. Now, you know, why did it come to this country? Well, we're going to take a look at that.
Yeah, I think we have one more photo here of the North African Zouaves here in formation here. Is there a particular reason, you know, do you know why that uniform, why was it designed that way? Do you have any idea, you know, why it looked like that?
It's supposed to be it was supposed to be a good fighting uniform, and Zouaves typically were almost like special forces. They were highly trained, especially with a bayonet, a musket and a bayonet, and they could perform these elaborate bayonet drills, and were had this esprit de corps among them, both North African Zouaves and American Zouaves, that really, when they were committed into battle, they were pretty fierce. And the trousers are big and baggy. Supposedly, you know, they don't chafe you as badly as a pair of wool trousers that are tight fitting or more natural. And the leggings, which I'll explain later, there's a term for them. They protect you, of course, from brush or snakes or any encumbrances that would be on the ground.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I read about was the baggy trousers and giving a little more breathability and a little more comfort, maybe in the hotter, you know, climates, especially in this area of the world. You know, that was one of the things that I read about. So that's kind of where it gets started, this concept of the Zouave soldier. But like Michael said, now we got to look at how that ends up in the United States right before the Civil War here. And I think a lot of that credit goes to our next slide here, Colonel Elmer Ellsworth. And this is maybe a quick time for me just to point out Ellsworth is a familiar name maybe to many people here in Pittsburgh because of Ellsworth Avenue. So keep that in mind as we're talking through here. That was named after Colonel Elmer Ellsworth. So if you're a Pittsburgher and you've ever driven on Ellsworth Avenue and wondered about it, this is the namesake for it. But Michael, how did he play a role in bringing the Zouaves to the United States?
Well, actually, I don't know where he was introduced to it, but when he saw the Zouaves perform, he formed a company called the United States Zouave Cadets, and he was, at the time, he lived in Chicago. He was a Chicagoan, and his Zouave company were also from that area, and they trained and performed drill, and then they toured. They toured around the country. And it was pretty phenomenal. I mean, people actually went to them like you would go see a gymnastics exhibit or some kind of a show, you know, where there was military music and they performed these harrowing bayonet drills and all in like perfect timing. And, you know, everything is synchronized. And what it did by introducing this show across the country, it spurred the growth of local Zouave companies. We're talking about right before the Civil War, 1860. And, you know, there's no war, nothing's happening, but there are little militia companies all over the North. And many of them would look at this as a way to kind of be exotic, entertaining, noticeable, any of those kind of things. Now, he would go on in the war. When the war started, he went on to command the 11th New York Volunteer Infantry, and they were called the Fire Zouaves. Often there'd be a company of firemen who would join all together in the Civil War, and this particular one was a Fire Zouave company. They had Zouave uniforms, and when the war started, they went right to Washington. Now, Ellsworth was a friend of Lincoln's. He was a very small man. I think he was 5'3" or something. And it's almost comical. There are a few pictures of him standing near Lincoln who's 6 foot, over 6 foot. But Ellsworth was a like a rock star, and Lincoln enjoyed having him around, and he's an Illinois person, so they had that in common.
Yeah, I think that's something that you pointed out when we were talking about this program is that when you see Elmer Ellsworth in New York Volunteer Infantry, you just assume that's where it originated. But, as you said, it originated back in Illinois and Chicago. And one thing I did read, Michael, that I think I can speak to is he actually learned about the Zouaves from a fencing instructor that he had in Chicago that was from France. So that is the introduction to the initial concept of the Zouaves. And then, of course, he grew that interest from there. So I think we have
here. I didn't know that.
yeah. He had a French fencing instructor is where I read it came from. So before we get in too much more into the Civil War, I think we have a little bit here about some of that touring, right? This is the cadets here.
This is a sheet music cover. So their image is going to pop up everywhere in 1860. This is actually, this pose is actually from a photograph. There's Ellsworth standing with his arms crossed. That was one of his favorite poses in several of the Zouave cadets. And again, this would have been published right before the war.
Yeah, and then I think the next one we have is from a visit. Here we are, wanted to make a connection to Pittsburgh. And is this right? Am I looking at the right thing that this is talking about his trip to Pittsburgh?
I believe so. This is a ticket. It's rather large. Mm-hmm. And it's in our collection. And it's in honor of the U.S. Zouave cadets to visit. There it is. Visit the city of Baltimore. Okay. So they were visiting Baltimore. It may have been brought home by a Pittsburgh person. And it's a card of admission. So this is what you would have, this was your ticket to go see Ellsworth perform. And it's, I think I see it's July 1860 on there too. So this is actually a pretty rare item to have. And like I mentioned, it's in our collection. It says right before the bend, drill a la Zouave and other festivities of honor and U.S. distinguished guests. So the drill a la Zouave is a special drill, like I was talking about with the bayonet and close order drill and acrobatic, really.
Yeah, and this is Baltimore, like you said. I do see that now on here, but they did have a stop in Pittsburgh as well. There's was part of the tour, so we don't have anything obviously to show from that. But there was a stop along the way in Pittsburgh, and probably helped play a role in coming up with the namesake, as I mentioned at the beginning, to the street here in Pittsburgh. But Colonel Elmer Ellsworth is known, of course, as the Zouave, the New York Zouaves, and bringing that to the United States. But he has another kind of infamous claim to fame in this, Civil War, and that's being the first officer killed in the war, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's a claim to fame that nobody wants.
But, infamous, right? Yeah.
Well, when the 11th New York Fire Zouaves came to Washington, they were among the first Union troops to come. And if Washington, directly across the Potomac is Alexandria, Virginia, and at the time that's another country. It seceded from the federal government, from the United States. And of course, the bridges were guarded and everything. But from a distance, on a boarding house called the Marshall House, the proprietor hung this giant Confederate flag, and it annoyed Lincoln. He kind of it was like pushing it in his face. And Ellsworth and a squad of Zouaves volunteered to go take it down. So here they come, pompous in their Zouave uniforms. They come to the Marshall House. They march up the stairs. Ellsworth tears the flag off the pole, wraps it around his body, and is coming down the stairs when the owner has a double-barrel shotgun and proceeds to blow a hole right in Ellsworth coming down the stairs and kills him. Now, the other soldier's last name is Brownell, the Zouave. Brownell immediately goes in, kills the proprietor, whose name I forgot. But it was a bang bang, and these are the first casualties of the war. It saddened Lincoln greatly. He was very saddened by the death of Ellsworth, and that's where the Ellsworth name ends up on streets, like in Pittsburgh, and because it's in his honor of being the first officer killed.
Yeah, I think Jackson was the name of the proprietor of
That's right. You're
the
right.
Marshall
You're right.
House. Yeah. And something else I just caught was, some people, they were saying how this had just as much of an effect on the fervor for war as the attack on Fort Sumter. I mean, this
Yeah.
this killing of Ellsworth spread like fire throughout the North, and really started to get people kind of, behind the idea of the war. So it was a big time name. I mean, everybody would have known the name Ellsworth after this incident, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hate to draw like a conclusion, be like somebody shooting Bob Hope, or like
Yeah,
a
right.
major star that everybody knew and just shooting him.
Yeah.
And we have, I think we were going to mention this.
Yep. The cane there that we're looking at there. What's that from?
That cane is made from the stairway of the Marshall House, and it's a piece of the mahogany stairway. What happened? The Marshall House uh, was kind of abandoned, or it ceased to operate. And almost every Union soldier that passed by there tore a piece of it out and made something out of it. There are accounts of being inside of it where everything was gone, all the woodwork was gone, and this cane is made from a piece of the stairway railing that went up where Ellsworth came down, and that is also in our collection.
Yeah, that's a piece that's on display in the exhibit there, and it's just an amazing piece of history from that momentous event for sure. Now, I think the next slide we have here is just kind of now going to speak to how popular the Zouave name and the colors and the look of the Zouave soldier really starts to become during the war, right, Michael?
Yeah, it's like a branding. We would consider it a branding today. The red trousers and these guys are wearing more of a military cap than a fez, but this is an envelope, and this would be something that soldiers would or civilians would purchase. There was a big trade in patriotic envelopes. This is one of thousands of designs, but it's a very striking design, and again shows the Zouave uniform, the red trousers, etc. And these are the Zouave cadets. I can tell just by the uniform configuration that they're wearing. And at that time, they would have been hand colored, so the red and the blue are applied by hand at the printer where these are being printed.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll take a quick minute here. We have a nice comment here from George Franks, who's watching us on Facebook, and he said, "In Halloween of 1963, I wore a Civil War Zouave uniform my mother made for me. Only a neighbor who was a daughter of the Confederacy knew what I was. I was thrilled." Thanks for sharing that comment, because
if you don't know, it's a strange
I can
uniform.
imagine you probably could have stood out a little bit that year because you were wearing something a little bit different, and everybody didn't know what that was. So, George, thank you for that comment. I thought I'd share that before we move on here to another well-known Zouave, and another person that we have items in our collection from, and that is General Gouverneur K. Warren, right, Michael?
Yeah, Warren, and a lot of you will recognize that name right away with his Gettysburg connection. And there's a photograph there of his monument on Little Round Top. And Warren was a West Pointer, graduated as an engineer, and when the war broke out, he joined the 5th New York Volunteer Infantry, which was a Zouave regiment, nicknamed the Zouaves. And he was lieutenant colonel of that regiment for a while before he rose in rank to become a major general and went on to his famous, more than we know about him, as the savior of Gettysburg and Little Round Top.
Yeah, and I think we have a slide here for the 5th New York. And I'm not, I think you might have said it. Is it Duryea? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Duryea. Yeah. That's Duryea standing with the double-breasted jacket. Leaning on the pole back there is our man. He's leaning on the pole. This is at Federal Hill in Baltimore. It's the first place the New York Zouaves went, the 5th New York went. And that's Warren back there with a captured telescope. There's an account of when his men were in Baltimore and Washington, they would make reconnaissance missions into Virginia, and one of them captured a telescope and gave it to Warren, and there's the telescope, and we have some other things.
Yeah, if we go to this next slide. Now, this is why we are talking about this topic, because this is a display in our museum in our Gettysburg room.
Yeah, we had a social event one time, and a woman walked up to me and asked if I knew who Gouverneur Warren was, and of course I knew exactly who he was, and we started a conversation. And she said her sister was married to a direct descendant of Gouverneur Warren, and they had his sword under their bed. So that led to more conversation. Was introduced to his sister, and she has loaned us Warren's sword. And she said she had a few other articles, and one of them is the telescope there. And I really believe the telescope is the one that Warren is holding in that picture on Federal Hill. It just is very similar to the size.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he's kind of credited with as a hero of Gettysburg and Little Round Top, and if I'm correct, it's because he kind of spotted that location, right? He kind of realized that was where they needed to be to gain victory, correct?
Yeah, he was an engineer, and he was scouting the field, and he made his way to Little Round Top because it was a good vision point. And while he was up there, he noticed the Confederate army moving to try to flank what would be that position, and he immediately put plan into action to bring troops up there. And it was literally a race. They got there moments before the Confederates came around the flank, and we all know the story of Joshua Chamberlain and Strong Vincent and Patty O'Rourke. It all was generated by Warren's insightfulness about how important that position was.
Yeah, and I also, just to go back to the lady that gave this to us on loan. You drove up to pick this stuff up, right? I mean, that kind of speaks to how important you recognize this was. That
wasn't going to let that get away. She was
Yeah.
very nice, and it just was like, if she's willing to loan it, I'm going to get it. And it was in Connecticut, so it wasn't like next door.
Right. So, and then there's a little bit more about I think the Warren family. Is this a brother of Warren? Am I right there?
Yeah, some of the things she gave us were photographs, and this is Warren had, I think he had 3 brothers. This is the youngest, Robert Parrott Warren, and you see he's wearing a Zouave uniform. That's the 5th New York's particular uniform. And his brother happened to be 16 years old, joined the 5th New York, and then after a brief period of time, was forced to leave the Army because he was too young. But these are stunning photographs of him taken at that time in the very early days of the 5th New York.
And then there's another family connection here, and I think this is a sister, right? This is Emily Warren, his sister.
This is the greatest. This is probably one of the, I don't want to say it's the greatest thing we have, but a very historically important piece that we have. Emily Warren was Gouverneur Warren's sister, and that's her on the left on her wedding day. Let's look at the picture on the right first. This is Emily, and it's inscribed Aunt Emily, taken before she was married. She used to visit Gouverneur Warren in camp when they were in big cities, or they had a downtime. And you see she's wearing a Zouave jacket. She had a special jacket made for her in the Zouave style. And this is an unknown picture of her. Not only is it important because she's Warren's sister, but she ended up marrying, I think his name was John Roebling, on Warren's staff. Roebling was from Saxonburg, actually, near us in Pittsburgh. And when the war ended, Roebling was an engineer, and he was commissioned to build the Brooklyn Bridge. And in building the bridge, he traveled down into the depths where they were sinking the pylons, and he got sick. I don't remember what it's called. The bends. He got the bends. That's what it was.
From decompression. Yeah.
Decompression. Yeah, and he got very sick, and he laid in bed within view of the bridge, and he would instruct Emily what to go and tell the construction workers every day. And it got to a point where Emily, knew engineering so well that she was able to make those decisions, and she was responsible for a lot of the nitty-gritty design and improvements that were being built on the Brooklyn Bridge. This is the Brooklyn Bridge. So she's credited with being, a woman engineer is building the Brooklyn Bridge. And this is the picture on the right is in our collection, our loan collection, and it's an unknown photograph of her.
Yeah, the gentleman there is Washington Roebling.
That's it, Washington. John was the father.
John was the father, and John started the Brooklyn Bridge, but he passed away, and then Washington took up the job. And I found that fascinating to hear about and read about Emily. And having some engineering background at the time, I'm sure it was pretty rare for a woman to have that kind of education. And then she is listed, I believe, on a plaque on the Brooklyn Bridge. It's John, Washington, and Emily are all listed as, playing a role in the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. And, like you said, Washington there was born in Saxonburg, PA here, not too far from where Soldiers and Sailors is. So just another local tie and another interesting tie through the Warren family. And then, also the Zouave jacket is one of the reasons we selected this as well. Of course, you've seen once again that influence expanding beyond just the Army, but to, civilian life and just people taking upon that just like George did, dressing up in 1963, taking inspiration from the Zouave uniform. I think next here we have another Pittsburgh connection here, and that's Marie Tepe Leonard, who we have in a photo here. And she was a vivandière, I believe is the right word for it, right, Michael?
It's a vivandière.
Vivandière.
And she was in eventually this picture especially in the 114th Pennsylvania, which was a Zouave regiment. And in the French army, women called vivandières accompanied the troops, and they carried a flask of whiskey or rum, and in the heat of battle or on a long march, that was the liquor was considered a stimulant, and the women would dole out these doses of stimulant to the soldiers. Under fire, Marie Tepe Leonard was under fire many times. She was called French Mary. She actually was from, I think, Alsace, in near France, and she was married to a soldier. The guy ran away with the company money, but she stayed with the regiment, and later, being under fire and being so noticeable, she was awarded a medal called the Kearney Cross, and she's wearing it there in that picture. And that was a divisional medal of honor. It's not the Medal of Honor we know, but it was a medal that was issued within a certain division. And there were two women that received the Kearney Cross, and of course many men. There's a gold one for officers and a bronze one for enlisted men. But she's pretty notable. She goes on to marry another Pennsylvania cavalryman, last name of Leonard. And she is it our next slide? I think, I don't know if it's. Let's see where. She is at the Battle of Gettysburg, and it was discovered in the many photos that were taken post battle. This photo is taken on the right on Cemetery Hill. We'd be standing at the cemetery gatehouse looking forward at some of the artillery positions. There's some lunettes, those are the earthworks. And leaning against a post is a person. And Brady a lot of times would use a person just to show scale. But when that was enlarged, it was found to be Mary Tepe, and there's an enlargement of her right there. So she was kind of hanging around the hospitals and helping wherever she could, and she just happened to grab her moment of fame there in a Brady photograph.
And I think what you were referencing, we have coming up next later in life. Here she is.
Yeah, she moved to Pittsburgh. They moved to Pittsburgh. Her marriage was rocky. She suffered from her wounds. She wasn't able to get a pension because she wasn't really considered a soldier. She attended, this is a photograph of her from a newspaper wearing her Kearney Cross and her casque, which is lettered French Mary Pennsylvania on the side. And she ended up owning a candy store. Oh, I think it was, I knew I'd forget where this was. She owned a candy store and had some physical and mental problems, probably PTSD, we'd call it today. And she ended up taking her own life by drinking poison. So it was a tragic end for her. She receives a lot of accolades now, but she died a lonely woman who wasn't recognized for what she did. And she was, again, she was a vivandière in a Zouave regiment.
Yeah, and I think she holds a special place at Soldiers and Sailors because she is in our Hall of Valor and is a part of the Civil War wall for the Hall of Valor because of the Kearney Cross. And pretty much that makes her at this time the only woman that is, in our Hall of Valor as far as earning the Medal of the Kearney Cross there, or any of the medals that qualify. So next, I think we have just another unnamed photograph here, but I think another one that speaks to, how popular this craze became.
Yeah, this is an unidentified civilian woman. No great story, except you'll notice the Zouave style jacket. It became a fashion brand, and women were making little short jackets with lots of fancy trim on them, kind of giving a tip of the hat to the Zouave style. And it was, again, very popular during the mid 60s and the war years.
Yeah. And then now we're going to move on to a pretty important regiment with ties to soldiers and sailors. That's the 155th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. And we see here the image on the left there is what we use to promote this program. And that is, of course, a soldier from the 155th. But really, the story here is what's on the right, Michael? I mean, that's an amazing piece, what we're looking at there on the right.
Yeah. The 155th is a Zouave regiment. And it's funny because many of the Zouave units are early war regiments. Coming into the war in 1861 with privately purchased uniforms many times a local citizenry or a wealthy commander would purchase Zouave uniforms for the whole regiment. And those uniforms, when they wore out, were not replaced because the Army didn't make them. They were privately made. So you're going to see a lot of the Zouave regiments lose their Zouave dress or parts of it as they progress through the war. But in 1864, the regiment from Western Pennsylvania, with many of its companies from Allegheny County, the 155th, received a Zouave uniform. And it's a little different. It doesn't have red trousers. It has blue trousers. And you'll notice, too, the fez, there was an additional piece that slid over the fez, which made it a turban. And this particular soldier is wearing it. But you alluded to, and this is why we're showing this, we have a scrapbook that belonged to McKenna, who was an enlisted soldier in the 155th, eventually became a judge, and he was also one of the founding members of Soldiers and Sailors. McKenna drew a picture of the new Zouave uniform in camp when they first got it. And this is within a day of receiving the uniform. McKenna is drawing this picture and sending it home in a letter to his family. So this may be one of the very first recordings of the Zouave uniform. There's many photographs of soldiers wearing it, but this may be one of the very first recordings of what that uniform looked like in the field, done by McKenna.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing piece there. And then staying with the 155th, another obviously very significant connection we have is this is the uniform that I alluded to earlier that is on display at the museum and really stands out and is a real eye catcher. And it belonged to Private Noah Pangburn. And what do we know about him, Michael?
Yeah, Pangburn, that is Pangburn's uniform. That is the uniform he wore during the war. The photograph on the left comes out of the regimental history of the 155th Pennsylvania. For years, I believed that this was a picture of Pangburn himself in the uniform, but we've learned by studying the book, the 155th, that's called Under the Maltese Cross, there are many pictures of soldiers wearing the uniform. And when you start to look at them, there's something that sticks out, like there are unusual poses and they're repeated over and over again, or this is one of the more standard poses. But if you look closely, Pangbird's head, his face has been tipped into that photo. It's pretty remarkable for a book that was made in 1911, but it puts him in a Zouave uniform.
Yeah, it's a little early photoshopping going on there.
Very early photoshopping.
Yeah.
That's right. But that is his real uniform on the right. And we do have a picture of him wearing it at a reunion. And the things I'd like to point out about it are the pattern on the front. That's called a tombeau, like that wiggly pattern, like a tadpole pattern. And originally that was yellow. It's faded out. And in the very top bar of it is a red Maltese cross, which is the insignia for the 5th Army Corps, 1st Division, which is what the 155th was in. There's also his fez, which has you can barely see it cropping up on the side, has a wool tassel that flings over the side. He has the baggy trousers. And on the photograph on the left, you can see the leg dress that he's wearing, and those are called jambières. That's a French name. It's I imagine it means some kind of leg cover or whatever. But they're partially leather and then canvas to the bottom. And we do have this uniform was given to us by his son after Noah passed away in the 20s. That's how long we've had it, 1920s, not the 2020s. And we do know that the musket is his, the haversack and canteen are also his. So it's pretty fascinating. And underneath the jacket is his shirt. We've had the jacket off, and the shirt is outstanding. And I was telling Tim a little earlier that the jacket was made at Schuylkill Armory in Philadelphia. It's stamped inside the sleeve with the SA. And it's that is an Armory produced. I know I just told you they weren't, but some of them were. This one was Armory produced because it was made for one particular regiment.
And, I don't know if you can answer this, but why was it bestowed upon the 155th? Why did they become a Zouave regiment this late in the war?
That's a really good question. Their colonel, Albert Pearson, he had trained them in drill and quarter combat, and they were really proficient at it. And he thought that, and there were other regiments that if you were a Zouave regiment, that was kind of a thing you were. You practiced, you were really good with bayonet drill, close order combat. It wasn't just a uniform that was doled out to any regiment. It kind of, as I mentioned before, maybe a special forces kind of moniker that we would use today. And Pearson believed that his regiment was good enough to have a Zouave uniform. So is it the next slide? I think
Pearson. I think we can go to our next slide then and introduce Colonel Pearson here. Yeah.
So that's Colonel Pearson, the 155th. And we found a letter in our archives that was Pearson is writing in 1901 that he is unable to come to a reunion, but he mentions that let's see, where is it? He mentions that you asked me who suggested the Zouave uniform for the 155th and who designed it. Well, Pearson did. He claims that he heard he wanted this recognition for his regiment, and he learned about some captured Confederate cloth that had been captured coming from England that didn't make it into this country. And he requested from General Meade that that Zouave uniforms be made out of it for his regiment, and that happened. Now it's unusual. It's not a gray. It's not a brown, but it's a real European blue. The jackets are a real European blue, and that's kind of indicative that it's a cloth made in Europe or England. And the 155th was then made headquarters guard for the Army of the Potomac, so they were kind of noticeable in their new uniforms, and they fought the rest of the war, 1864 to 1865, wearing that uniform. In fact, at the surrender at Appomattox, they were in Joshua Chamberlain's brigade, and Chamberlain picked the 155th as one of the regiments that would accept the Confederate surrender, and they were dressed in their Zouave uniform.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of we can point out here that Pearson is also a recipient of the Medal of Honor and is buried here in Pittsburgh in Allegheny Cemetery. So, once again, more ties to the city of Pittsburgh, and here in this case through the 155th. And we also have our next slide is documenting the 155th and their contributions at the Battle of Gettysburg. This is their monument at Gettysburg.
Yeah, they arrived right after the fighting, the crescendo of fighting, and they spent the July 2nd and 3rd on Little Round Top on the right-hand side of the line, and later would put their monument there. Their original monument did not have a soldier on it, and it was years later they decided that they wanted to acknowledge the fact that they were there, and the soldier is wearing Zouave dress, and if you could put it together, that's 1863, and the regiment didn't get the uniform until 64, so it's a little anachronistic, but it's what the veterans wanted to portray themselves as, and it's in a very prominent location up there on Little Round Top.
Yeah. Now, the next one was something that was completely new to me, and Michael wanted to have a little distinction here because this is another kind of different style uniform you could have seen in the Civil War. And of course, we're talking here, as you can see, and I'm going to butcher this, the chasseur, is that what we're looking at?
Good. Yeah, you had a lot of French, didn't you? It's a chasseur.
Chasseur.
Yeah. Now, this is a member. Well, this possibly is a member of the 62nd Pennsylvania from Allegheny County. Many companies from Allegheny County and surrounding area. The chasseur uniform is a little different than the Zouave uniform. It doesn't have the tombeau and the decorative front. It does have baggy trousers. It does have the jambière. It has they call it a field cap, which is a lot like our World War II service cap, that or even beyond that, like a folding cap, and it has large wool epaulets. And this uniform was a prize that was won by 3 regiments in the Army of the Potomac in 1861, but for proficiency in drill. There was a competition in the 62nd Pennsylvania, the 83rd Pennsylvania, which is from the Erie area, and the 18th Massachusetts were winners of this uniform. And these uniforms were contributed by the French government to these regiments. And they included not only the uniform, but camping equipment, backpacks, cooking equipment, tents, stoves, blankets, backpacks. There was a cape with a cloak hood on it. They were elaborate uniforms, but these guys, when they got them, I mean, they were worthy of the prize, but they thought, there was a quote from a guy in the 62nd that said it was the ugliest uniform in the Army of the Potomac. And they did not wear them long. When they went out on campaign, they packed them up and stuffed them in a warehouse in Washington, never to be seen again. So these were not worn during the war. It was quite an honor to be recognized, but they did not wear these and fight in them.
And you can see why, being the fact that this was also French influence, and you can see why they could probably get, kind of mixed up with the Zouaves at times. But I think you did well in explaining the subtle differences there that we're looking at. From there, I think we're going to look at some of the other Pennsylvania units. We have the 72nd Infantry Regiment, another fire Zouaves here, right, Michael?
Yeah, they're from Philadelphia, fire companies that joined, put together for a regiment, and they also they're known for being right at the apex of Pickett's charge in Gettysburg. They're right there in the front line, front row seats for that one.
Yeah, and this is more stationary, right? Is that what?
That's stationary? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an envelope, and this is stationary. Yeah.
And then we have just quickly just a rundown of some of the other Zouave regiments from Pennsylvania that you were able to kind of look up. And I thought it was interesting. You mentioned that sometimes it wasn't even for an entire regiment. Let's say it could just be a company out of a regiment. Did I get that right? Am I right with that?
Yeah. When companies would join, they would take on monikers. Like one of my favorites from Pittsburgh area is the Iron City Guards. It was Company A of the 9th Pennsylvania Reserves, but they would like have a team name, and there were quite a few Pennsylvania companies that were Zouave that went out in 1861, maybe loosely outfitted in Zouave, but the regiments listed here were committed Zouave regiments that wore the Zouave uniform for most of the war, if not all of it.
And then we have the another group, the Heath Zouaves. But I think this is a lot of post-war, right? What we're looking at here is some post-war items.
Yeah, so it's not over when the war is over. This is right out of Pittsburgh. There was a company of that was raised called the Heath Zouaves, and Captain Heath had been a Zouave cadet, U.S. Zouave cadet with Ellsworth early in the war, and then he ended up serving in Illinois and other regiments and moving to Pittsburgh, and he formed a company of soldiers for the Pennsylvania National Guard, the 18th Pennsylvania, and they were a Zouave company, and these are some momentums from them. The one is from the 1894 convention, the National Convention, GAR, that was here, sesquicentennial, and the ticket for performance over there in 1871.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking, Pangburn's uniform was a uniform he would have worn a lot post-war as well. So it was something like, that was a source of pride, I'm sure, for these guys to want to, carry that legacy on after the war, and that Zouave legacy would live on after the war as a result of that.
Yeah, it distinguished them as being unusual or special.
Yeah, right. Yeah, making them unique and stand out a little bit for sure. And then I have here just this last photo here, which is just a great photo of the Zouaves kind of all stacked up.
This is a photograph in our collection. It is the Heath Zouaves, and here you can really get a feeling for like performance art. There's a bristling mob of a company of infantry. Heath is in the center with the flag, and this would have been on a battlefield. This was a maneuver that would have been used to protect the colors, but it's way overblown. It's really more performance and awe than it is fundamental and useful. But these are the Heath Zouaves from Pittsburgh. Again, they were incorporated into the National Guard of Pennsylvania. I'm sure they didn't always wear a Zouave when they did that, but it was kind of a nostalgic look of holding on to the Zouave tradition.
Yeah, and obviously they're doing this pose, and the bayonet is prominently a part of this and a big part of this. And you talked about how bayonet training and the use of the rifle in that regard, and I'll take it all the way back to Elmer Ellsworth and learning from a French instructor about fencing. Obviously that could be some of the relation again in that training with the bayonet as a weapon for some close quarter combat.
Yeah, I think this formation is called Guard Against Cavalry, and they're protecting the flag.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were, all hooked up like that, no horse is going to charge into that thorn bush. Of bristling bayonets. It's formidable.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, definitely there. So if you have any questions and you haven't submitted them, this is your time. You can go ahead and submit those if you're watching on Facebook. And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment just to talk about what's coming up at Soldiers and Sailors. We've got, our next Tabletop Gamers coming up on Saturday, May 17th. We'll be doing Naval May, so it'll be naval games. If you're not familiar with Tabletop Gamers, they are a club that meets once a month at Soldiers and Sailors and plays military board games and miniatures games, and all related to our mission. And it's for ages, really all ages. We have young people play. We have old folks come and play and join along as well. It's a great way to share your love of history and have a little competition and have a little bit of fun as well. So our next game day will be May 17th. And then our big event coming up on Monday, May 26th is our Memorial Day celebration. I'll tell you what, if you haven't been to Soldiers and Sailors in a while, or if you've never been, Memorial Day is the day to come and check us out. We are open for free that day with activities going on all throughout the day. We have fun activities for all the family, kids games, bouncy houses outside, music, all the fun stuff associated with kind of Memorial Day in the beginning of summer. And also we do take moments to reflect upon the true meaning of Memorial Day, of remembering and honoring all of those soldiers who gave their lives for their country. So we do have a little bit of mix, and I think that's what I'm very proud of at working at Soldiers and Sailors, that, yes, we have Memorial Day fun, but we also get to the heart of what Memorial Day is all about. So what better place to enjoy Memorial Day than at Soldiers and Sailors? It's it's free to attend and come to the event. Of course, there's food and things that are there available for purchase, but the admission to the museum and many of the activities are free. And once again, that's coming up on Memorial Day, Monday, May 26th. And if you want to learn more, as I said in the beginning, it's always great to visit soldiersandsailorshall.org to learn all about how to visit the museum and all of our upcoming events. We have a nice comment there from Andrew Capitz, a longtime viewer of ours. Nice job, guys. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate you tuning in and all your comments and participation through the years here. And this time, I'll take a moment to point out next month's program. So next month's Spotlight On will be on the United States Merchant Marine. That'll be on June 12th at 7 o'clock at Facebook and YouTube, like usual, our regular channels. And I think this is a topic I'm really looking forward to. It is going to be the anniversary in June will be the anniversary of the establishment of the Merchant Marine. And I think it's a group that not too many people know about. And we take pride at Soldiers and Sailors that we have an exhibit dedicated to the Merchant Marine. And they are, kind of that extra branch of the service that doesn't always get the attention they deserve. And I think you'll learn that they certainly deserve more credit. And we're going to try to bring light to that. And of course, highlight some great stories and items from our collection. So that'll be next month on June 12th at 7 p.m. So with that, I think that's going to bring us to a close. Michael, thank you for all the great information tonight. And, thank you for having your internet work all the way through, because I was really worried that I would have to try to fudge my way through some of this. But I appreciate all your
all the
knowledge.
sewer stuff.
Yeah, I would have butchered that one all up. So thank you for all your knowledge. And thank you all for tuning in. I hope to see you at Soldiers and Sailors. I hope to see you at Memorial Day. And I definitely want you to tune in next month when we see you for the Merchant Marine. So take care, everybody, and have a good night.